All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Cunningham. I'm with the Robinson County Cooperative for Sustainable Development, as well as working with the North Carolina Disaster Survival and Resiliency School. I'm excited and glad that you're here. We're going to have an exciting afternoon, morning, afternoon, so I hope that you're ready. First, what I would like to do is I would like to have some, I think that they're putting in the chat, if I'm not mistaken, the agenda that we're going to follow today, and you can follow along with me as I review that, if you choose to. This is, there we go. All right, so we're going to talk with the session leaders, Larsene Taylor and Bobby Jones, are with the Down East Coal Ash Coalition and Resilience Hub. Sally McLean and Mac Ledgerton from the Robinson County Cooperative for Sustainable Development and Disaster Survival and Resiliency School. The overall session of this session activity, the overall structure of this section activity is that we're going to do brief introductions. So from the session leaders, and as such, we're asking if you could put in the chat your name, your location, and your organizational affiliation. I will briefly read off that information so that you just know who's here with us today. We're going to have comments by our session leaders, and then we're going to open it up for a group discussion. That's what our session will look like today. So with that, I would like to have the session leaders, starting with Larsene Taylor and Bobby Jones. If you could introduce yourselves, just say where you're from and what your location and your organizational affiliation. Well, I already did that, but I like to hear it from you. So I'm nervous. It's okay. So we're going to start with Larsene.
Good morning, comrades. It's great to be present in this space. I'm Larsene Taylor. She, her, hers are my pronouns. I am a retired activist living 70 years down east in Goldsboro, North Carolina. I'm co-organizer of the Down East Coal Ash Coalition of Environmental and Social Justice. I'm co-organizer of the Resilience Hub of Goldsboro, which is a collaboration of the NC Climate Justice Collective, Black Workers for Justice, and Down East Coal Ash Coalition, to all of which I belong. I'm happy to share and discuss with you all today as we strive forward towards a future that will benefit from the economy that works for the common good of everybody. Like I said, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Larsene. Bobby?
I'm Bobby Jones, and like Larsene, I'm from Goldsboro, North Carolina. So if anybody need a good barbecue hookup, let me know. I got one for you. But I must warn you, I'm a vegetarian. And let me tell you a little briefly, Down East Coal Ash, we're dedicated to protecting the environment and advocating for the most frequently Black, brown, and poor white communities in Eastern North Carolina that has been relegated to living in somewhat toxic environments, larger as a result of corporate greed, corporate bullying, poor regulatory oversight. And we have a commitment to working to preserve and protect their environment, as well as community resilience.
Thank you, Bobby. Sally? Is Sally here? I can't.
Oh, I was muted. I can't believe I was muted. I was just talking. Sally McLean. I'm from Maxton, North Carolina. Rural community. I'm affiliated with Robinson County Cooperative for Sustainable Development. And I'm just pleased to be in the space today to share and learn.
Thank you, Sally. Mac?
Yes, I'm Mac Ledgerton. I'm co-director with Sally of our Robinson County Cooperative for Sustainable Development, a sponsored project of SVA. he, him, and I live in Pembroke, North Carolina. And this is a 4-month, long time coming to be here, and it's glad to be with those of you who are helping us launch this by being in this group today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm just going to go through the chat, and I'm going to read everyone who's here so that you'll know. We have Connie Leeper from the North Carolina Climate Justice Collective, Mac Ledgerton, as he just talked about, Robeson County Cooperative for Sustainable Development. He's from Pembroke. Cora Webb is, her family is from Charleston, South Carolina. Alejandro Guerrero is from Charlotte. Danny Moore is from Raleigh with the Robeson Cooperative and Movement to End Racism and Islamophobia. We have George Friday here. George from Gastonia. She's with Mary and North Carolina Warren. She's a board member. We have Jillian Johnson. She's from Durham, and she's been a resident for 20 years. She grew up in Virginia. Welcome, everyone. B is born in Pennsylvania, but raised in Durham. She's with SVA as well. George Friday. Oh, she's mentioning something. Jody Lassiter, North Carolina Climate Justice Collective. She lives in Durham, but she grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. And I think I got everyone. And my name is Anita Cunningham, and I grew up in Washington, D.C., and North Carolina is my home state now. So I'm very excited. I live in Lumberton, North Carolina. Welcome, everyone. Let me just close this. Okay. Okay, so our session, we will have some comments by our session leaders, and I'm going to start the conversation with a couple of questions for each of the groups. Larsene Taylor and Bobby Jones will be first to answer these two questions. Larsene and Bobby will start off with you and ask you, what are the most important components of strategizing for community disaster response and resilience in Eastern North Carolina? And what does community-driven disaster organizing look like? And if any of you have questions or comments, please be sure to put those in the chat. We will review the chat about any questions that you have or comments, and we'll talk about them during the discussion portion of this session. So I will turn it over to, I guess, Larsene first, and then Bobby.
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me? All
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Okay. The components, I consider, or we consider them in 3 phases, which would be we learn, we know, we act. In learning, we learn from the past storms and hurricanes that we have had, the past disasters that have fallen upon us. You know, we try to learn how to better protect ourselves. In knowing, we have to know what resources can be found here, you know, in the city, in the town, in each other, in the community, and in our government. Once we uncover what is available to us, you know, it will help us recover more quicker after a disaster and be better able to handle moments of uncertainty. It helps us to become clear about what is important to us so we can protect what we need. Action is by helping to direct how we change, how we change and how we grow. We can press our local, regional, and state government representatives to support, you know, the visions that we have, how we're going to survive all the disasters that we face. We promote development that does not destroy our environment. We become active community visionaries. We help sculpture what our future needs to look like, you know, what's going to work for, like I said, the common good of all. I've turned the good part over to Bobby. He's the man with the plan.
Thank you, Larsene.
You know, from since October 2016, Hurricane Matthew, through Florence and on, we were able to learn in real time kind of what it really took to develop a resilience infrastructure. And it kind of made us throw out a lot of the things that we thought were important. One of the first things that we realized is that we have to have a sincere and authentic commitment to involving the impacted community. Okay, that was one of the major things that we discovered that should be a important part of a component of doing this. And the second thing we realized that we've got to build from ground up. You know, there are no infrastructures, resilience infrastructures in place that can, I think, fit in any community. You can use some principles that's implied in other areas and that type of thing, but you have to get to know the community you're in, the area that you're in, the kind of disaster, the kind of abuse that have taken place in the community, and build from ground up. And as you build, let the impacted people help define what your end product is going to be. And versus components, I think we need to approach this, and what we've tried to do is approach this with some kind of principles in mind, that we're going to always be respectful of that community, that we're going to focus on empowering that community. Yes. We have to validate that community. You have to go through almost a process of helping the community realize oftentimes that they have been hurt, they have been abused, they have been treated bad, and validate them, and then just engage in a lot of support.
Thank you so much, Larsene and Bobby. That was awesome. I'm going to ask the same question of Sally and Mac, which what is the most important component of strategizing for community disaster response and resilience in Eastern North Carolina? And then what does community-driven disaster organizing look like? So I'm going to start with Sally. We'll start with you.
Let me unmute myself. Good morning. Community-driven disaster organizing is about organizing and empowerment of most disaster-impacted residents and communities to become an equal partner and co-leaders in the disaster response, recovery, and resiliency phases in disaster systems. What are we talking about is just response, just recovery, and just resiliency. So what does just response look like? It looks like this. Our impacted communities prepare for a hurricane or pandemic by taking these steps. First, starting weekly meetings. You know, right now we social distancing and whatnot. So of course we can do it outside or however, just as long as it's social distance is involved. And collecting contact information for every household. And to choose a community street leader on every street that can communicate with the people in that session you know, need that assistance. And next, form and train an advocacy team and sign up for a free conference call number so that there will be some kind of contact information that can be you know, in place in the event of an emergency. Also list family emergency evacuation location plans. You know, where are you gonna be if something happens? It's preferable that you try to be with relatives and opposed to a facility or, you know, or whatever, but that should be in the plan. Invite a county or city emergency service staff member to attend the meetings when possible so that they can be on board with the planning and can assist with that. During the first phase, you know, which we call the diaspora phase, when our people, you know, they flee from their homes due to flooding, street leaders and advocacy teams need to connect with one another, you know, on their streets so that they can make sure that everybody's safe. Reach out to your folk that you've been working with. If cell phone services is out, of course, you know, you can always contact them after the service is restarted. And that's very possible. And to make sure that everybody that needs medical attention has it, is in a position to get it. Now, these are just some of the steps to be taken because of time restraints and that sort of thing. I'm trying to be as brief, but you can find the complete report in Google Docs. And I'm gonna stop right there with that.
Thanks, Sally, so much. Okay, Mac, you're on deck. About what is the most important component of strategizing for community disaster response and resilience in Eastern North Carolina, and what does community-driven disaster organizing look like, to wrap up your portion?
Okay, good morning, y'all. To frame my comments, I decided to be creative and prepare a sample Just Recovery Charter for North Carolina in order to describe just recovery organizing. So it goes like this: Just Recovery Charter for North Carolina. We are an organized and powerful community-based organization of disaster-impacted residents. We as disaster-impacted residents meet weekly and lead the effort to revision and redevelop our own communities. We, the disaster-impacted residents, are committed, competent, educated, and trained to lead our community recovery both effectively and successfully. We are at the decision-making table as equal partners in the disaster recovery process. We work in partnership with our community organizers and leaders, other nonprofit organizations, and local, state, federal agencies and officials in designing, implementing, and evaluating this just recovery process. To recover justly means that we become transformed communities that are resilient. We are able to meet challenges, break down barriers, and sustain a proactive and powerful approach to broad-based social change. Our state of North Carolina now uses a top-down system of disaster recovery. In most cases, highly paid consultants and experts are hired to revision and redesign our communities for us. Local, state, and federal officials and government agencies are their neglectful partners. We need to transform our state disaster recovery system. We need to stop all buyout programs until we, as disaster-impacted communities, take charge of our own recovery and destiny. As disaster-impacted communities, we will never recover until our authority, liberty, and dignity is respected and honored. We are ready, willing, able, and committed to our just recovery. We call on the public and private sector within our beloved state of North Carolina to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you, everyone. So I just want to make sure that we're scheduled to end at noon, so we're going to try to move along with the session. So we have some more questions for the presenters, then we will open it up, and if there are questions in the chat, I'll go over those, and the presenters will take that information and respond to you within kind. So I have these two questions. For this question for Larsene Taylor and Bobby Jones. What is the Resilience Hub, and what is its role in disaster community organizing? And whoever chooses to go first.
I'll be going first, ladies first.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it's exactly what the word hub means. The center of interest, importance, or activity. When you put resilience with it, you are talking about the power to spring back, recover, stay afloat, and bounce forward. The hub's role in a disaster is to execute what we have strategized and organized the community to be, which is a community that is resilient and strong, and in the face of change and disaster. It is a group that will support you and others before, during, and after community disasters such as hurricanes, flooding, the pandemic, even police brutality, unjust policing. I say all that to say that when we started back months ago, we had that road show, the Good Fire, you know, y'all missed a treat then, you know, that was something that moved, you know, throughout the counties that were impacted and stuff. And that's where we got that drive to do the resilience, to be able to bounce back, you know, make our communities what they should be. I also would like to state that it's imperative that we have to start at the local levels where we're impacted at, with our officials, with our representatives, with our city council, our commissioners. We've got to get those people to realize what we're dealing with. Vote them out if they ain't doing what they're supposed to do. If they're not helping us, vote them out. We got to get that vote. And continue to change up to the state of North Carolina, round up to the government. We got to put people in office that respect us and work for us, not make their pockets fat. You know, they got to do the right thing to create policies that affect us. And I want to say also that in your environmental racism is what I call it, is that we're impacted because we're in the lowest communities. You know, that they bring these factories and stuff, you know, to places that where they think we don't have any political power to fight them back off. You know, so that in itself is a struggle. And now you got the pandemic on top of that. We're already suffering, you know, from the hurricanes and stuff, and now the pandemic it's just capitalizes. It makes things worse. But I feel that the pandemic has caused us and made us realize that we have to slow down, and we have become creative. Even now, you know, it stops some things, but look, we're having this virtual conversation now. You know, it may have knocked us down, but it has not stopped us. We're gonna be resilient. We're gonna rise up, and we're gonna win. Now, again, I give it to my brother.
Thank you, Larsene.
As a result of relationships I had built through Matthew and Florence, when we had storms since then, I've received calls from folks saying, Mr. Jones, you know, what do you think the storm going to do? What do you think going to happen? Do you think that we'll be able to stay in our homes? As we get out, develop and get our resilience hubs in place, one of the things I'm looking forward to, I will not have to receive those calls because the people will already know what's going on. We're working to ensure that they're educated and empowered, and put together processes and protocols themselves, so they'll know what to do. They'll know how to get information relative to how the storm is progressing up the East Coast. They'll know that if their house is destroyed in the storm, that they have where they can seek shelter, or if they need food, where we have a stash of supplies. So that's what we're looking forward to, and that's what a resilience hub should clearly look like. It should take away the fears. I mean, I call it PTSD because that's clearly once a storm started coming up the coast, people start experiencing that. I mean, they call me, and when you talk to them in the community, I mean, they're reliving some of the horror, trauma, if you will, that they experienced in previous hurricanes and et cetera, and floods. So by involving them in this process and by developing a resilience hub, they will have a system and a protocol in place that they can rely upon.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Thank you. So Mac and Sally, I want to ask you, what is the Robeson County Disaster Survival and Resiliency School, and what is its role in the disaster community organizing? And I'm going to ask Mac to go first, and then Sally, if you could close it up. But before you start, I just want to say, if they come back and make us go back into the main session, there will be information at the end of this today where you can contact us regarding the North Carolina Survival School, and I will have the resources for all of the speakers here on this session if you need to contact them. So if you didn't get your information in the chat, if for some reason we run out of time and I don't get a chance to ask your question, please make sure that you stay till the end of the day so that you can get the information. So with that, Mac, yes, Mac, can you start us off with that? You're muted. You're muted. You're still muted.
Maybe they'll leave us in here longer since we were late getting in.
Okay.
But
No,
anyway, the Robinson County Disaster Survival and Resiliency School is a part of the statewide school coordinated by SVA. And it's the first local school to be launched on the ground. And it is hoped that it will be the first of many local schools in Eastern North Carolina. It's very similar to the resiliency hubs. And I think Jody and I've worked together a long time. And so I'm hoping we'll collaborate on the organizing work with these hubs and schools. So we're actually going to launch our local school this month in August. We'd hoped to do it before the first hurricane, but hopefully this one won't be as bad. And we're really anticipating some really rough ones later in the season. So our school will first operate virtually and hold weekly meetings. We will mount a coordinated, organized approach to improve community-based and statewide approaches to disaster, promoting a just response and recovery in relation to both the pandemic and climate disasters. The pandemic is rapidly growing in rural North Carolina. Our rate of infection here in Robinson County is 1 out of every 32 people. Our positive test results are the highest in the state at 18%, which is over twice as high as the state average. And our rate of infection is 30 times larger than the national average. The Survival School will provide a space and place to organize and engage the community in pandemic education, protection practices, policy advocacy, self-care, and systems change. And along with the hurricane we're facing the next few days, we're likely to experience more serious ones in the coming months. Our school will be the organizing arm that brings impacted communities to the table as equal partners and take charge of their community's recovery and resiliency, both in relation to new hurricanes as well as to Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence. We plan to halt the neglect of our most impacted disaster communities, which are primarily communities of color. Our local and statewide schools will be the hubs and vessels for both individual and social transformation. And collectively, we can create a more just approach to disaster response and recovery in facing both the pandemic and climate disasters. Si se puede, yes, we can. Sally?
thank you, Matt. I just got a note, if everybody looked, that we have 10 extra minutes. So we have until 12:10. So Sally, if you can wrap it up for us.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll wrap up our comments with a brief description of what we hope to accomplish through the local survival and resiliency school. First, we'll develop strong relationships and community bonds in our most disaster impacted communities. This will occur among our people in facing the pandemic and during the following hurricanes, floods, heat, and droughts. We'll build organized power and influence. The Survival School will be our vessel for developing and sustaining our vision and voice at the decision-making table. We will exert our leadership role in meetings and overcoming our challenges as we face them together. The school will provide up-to-date information on the pandemic and climate disasters. Members of the school will develop organizing and action plans to address the growing pandemic. We will decide our goals for revisioning and redeveloping our communities as a result of Hurricane Matthews and Florence. We'll also prepare for hurricanes now in 2020. The school will be a center of community and state-based advocacy work. The school will be a strong advocate to prevent the destruction of our communities of color impacted by the pandemic, hurricanes, floods, rising heat, and droughts, all of which we are experiencing. If we don't organize and act, we're going to lose homes, jobs, and businesses. We will lose our schools and faith communities. We may even lose voting districts if our communities aren't rebuilt in just a way. In a just way. We will learn new ways of self-care, of sharing our challenges and burdens, of encouraging and nurturing one another, of learning new organizing and advocacy skills, and of preserving and strengthening our cultural, social, and spiritual foundations. For it is all of these combined that provide substance in times of struggle and trauma such as these.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, everyone, for all the presenters, for all of that awesome information and the work that you're doing. It's been very valuable to me, and I'm sure others. We have a few minutes left, and I just wanted to remind you, I'm going to drop in the chat my email address if you're interested in information regarding the survival school or any of the presenters' information today. Also, there was a document, a Google Docs dropped into the chat of the presentation and supportive documentation about this presentation, and Mac and Sally's information is supported there. If Larsene and Bobby have information, I'll make sure I get that, and I'll provide that to you guys before the end of the session today. So I'm going to drop in my email. And so I have a comment. It's from Connie Leeper. She says, Jody is the co-convener of the North Carolina Climate Justice Collective and not engaged in the Resilience Hub efforts as an individual. Is getting folks to fill out the census a part of the work? It's about federal resources to address some of these issues. Can somebody address that?
I think it would be a very appropriate a part of what we're trying to do, since a large part of what we're doing is to try to empower the communities that we're working with, and clearly that's something that's very empowering. That's something that would support them in the future as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions that you want to put into the chat, or we may have a couple minutes if you want to unmute yourselves and ask any questions or comments about what you've heard, what value it is to you, what other resources you may need, or want to collaborate in some way. You can feel
Well,
free
let's
to
hear
do
some
that.
voices from those that are in the room with us.
Yes, yes. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cora Webb, and my question is about developing advocacy teams and choosing community leaders, which is something I think everyone's touched on either directly or indirectly in talking about responses to disaster. So I would like to hear more about the process of choosing community leaders. Like, what do you look for in terms of someone who could respond to disasters and check in and make sure everyone has gotten out, or that everyone has the resources that they need? Like, is it a experience level? Is there like an age requirement, or is this someone who knows the town and knows the city and knows the members of the community you're working in?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My response would be should be a shared responsibility. Clearly, you have certain community members that have a greater awareness, some that have more initiative. But one of the things that we try to encourage is to capitalize on the interdependent gifts of the community, and try to benefit from those. A lot of people are tired. A lot of people don't want to commit, if you hear what I'm saying. But we've been more successful and more of a shared, encouraging a shared responsibility. But then again, you sometimes you get lucky and you just come up with a great leader that has a lot of compassion for the community, and they'll go above and beyond. But my encouragement would be approach it from the perspective of shared responsibility. But one of the things I wanted to emphasize is that you need to be aware of the fact that the challenges, some of the challenges that we see and that you have to deal with, is that you're going to be going against a lot of the established national, state, and local protocols that are in place. a lot of them are in place alleged to help our communities, but actually they don't. A lot of them actually do hurt the communities by making them somewhat dependent at times and that type of thing. And sometimes you really have to, one of the biggest dynamics you have to deal with is sometimes the mindset of the impacted community member. You know, you got to realize there have been years and years of when a disaster occurred, encouraging a community member to come get in line and receive a handout or whatever, receive whatever we have, versus putting them on an empowerment end so they can attend community political meetings and city council meetings and advocate for what they deserve and they're entitled to.
Thank you so much for answering that. And thank you for the rest of the panelists and presenters for this very useful and insightful information.
A great question. Thank you.
Thank you
I have a
very
question.
much.
I have a question, if you would. Yes, thanks for all. I'm looking around and I see we're all family, so I can ask this. How do you deal with like the how do you like make sure it's like collaborative, like in that way? Because there's a lot of like local groups and folks that like want to jump in and like get in the moment, and sometimes like they get in the way, or I'll just try to be as frank as possible too. Like I remember like Elena last year when we were like going, and then you have other groups that are like, oh, you know, they got here first, and it gets messy, it gets dramatic. There's the politics of it. How do you like stay focused and because it's still like we want to collaborate and we want to like have you need that, but at the same time some groups and some don't seem to have the best intentions all the time, or seem predatory or just responsive to that moment, and you're like it gets distracting, gets messy. How do you stay focused and like just but still have a spirit of collaboration?
It's a very good point. Truth be told, that's a problem I'd like to have, but my short answer would just be stick around, because that only lasts right after the emergency. If you hear what I'm saying, after the disaster, that only lasts about a couple weeks or a month. But if you stick around, all that stuff will die down. You hear what I'm saying, and you find yourself being there by yourself. In our community, we don't have a lot of support. Now, right after a hurricane or flood, Red Cross, some other folks will pull in and that type of thing. But the good thing about a Resilience Hub, we're here for the long haul. And it's not about us, it's about the impacted community. And our goal from day one is to build a community where we don't have to be a part of it, if you hear what I'm saying, where they're taking care of themselves. Because that's a cathartic experience for them. That makes them feel good. That even motivate them more. That make them proud of their community. You see other positive things that offshoots of that. So, but that's a great question, because I'm reminded of what happened after Matthew. That type of thing.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you. As I said, we have a few seconds. In the chat, there's information of how to save the link for the Google Docs, and you can also do file save chat, and I think you may be able to kind of copy and paste it from there. But if you would like that Google document, please make sure that you paste that link into your browser or save the chat for that information. We appreciate everyone for joining. I want to thank the presenters again. It was an awesome presentation. I really got so much information. I'm privileged to have an opportunity to collaborate with you guys in Goldsboro, as well as you, Sally and Mac, and I'm thrilled. And thank you, everyone. If you have any additional questions, as I said, my email, please be sure to send me an email and I'll make sure that I get back with you. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.